Mr. Radikov, for 5 minutes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think we're all back. Mr. Miller, in September, the Senior Immigration and Housing Minister, Sean Fraser, said that the government wants to align our immigration policies with the absorptive capacity of communities, and that includes housing. So when the government drastically increased the international student program from 350,000 under Harper to the, and you mentioned the hockey stick, to 1.4 million that is now exists under Justin Trudeau, did you consider the pressure this increase would put on the housing situation in Canada?
Just on the characterization, I think it's clear that the federal government didn't drastically increase it. This has always, for 40 years, been a program that has not had a cap on it.
Did you consider housing when you were working with that program?
You know, I think what we did is we trusted provinces to regulate their designated learning institutions, and in a context where you're bringing people in with $40,000, $50,000 for an educational experience, you would expect those institutions to be responsible and provide access to housing. It's clear that when you look at the volume, and that's part of the reasons why we took this measure, there has been an impact of that volume on affordability and cost of shelter. So
I guess my point is, you said you took this measure, so you had data to do that. Did you consider housing when you took this measure, the data that you used?
Look, this was not a housing decision per se. It was an integrity of the system decision based on the challenges that we were seeing and the ecosystem that had been created by it. We can't deny the impact of the volume on affordability, notably the cost of shelter in certain areas. And indeed, economists have said that this measure that we took as a government currently to put the cap is probably one of our most important affordability measures that we have taken. So it is important, but it was not at the core of it. At the core of it was to make sure that Canadians could be proud of a system for international students.
So I'm still a little confused. So you're saying that you did take housing into consideration or you didn't? I'm not sure what you're saying. What are you telling me?
I can't help you with your confusion, but what I can say is that we knew what affordability challenges we were facing with respect to the large increase in volume in certain institutions that were perhaps abusing of a generous visa system that is regulated by the provinces.
The point of you coming here is to help clarify confusion that we might have here. So with respect, I think that's the purpose of you being here. So you're telling me then that you do not consider housing impacts when you are looking at the program and designing a program and deciding how many people should be coming into the country?
We are absolutely currently looking at that as part of our recognized institution models. What we did and what we should take responsibility for is we trusted institutions and we trusted provinces, and perhaps we should have scrutinized that a little better.
Honourable member.
So there's no system within your department for tracking or being responsible for what the impacts are on housing. It's not something that the department looks at.
Honourable Minister.
If your question to me, Brad, is do I make sure that every single student has housing? The answer to that is no. There is absolutely responsibility that lies within the institutions that are making 50 grand off these people to get them housing and to make sure they have the proper learning experience. I don't understand what part of that is confusing.
Honourable member.
So I've looked through the department reports that you have, and I've looked for anything to do with housing in there. And so when you're monitoring the output and the results of your staff, I don't see anything in there about housing. There is a little bit about asylum seekers and refugees in terms of dollars, but beyond that, it's clear that there's no consideration of housing when you are looking at your immigration plans and making decisions on capping, for example. So is that true, I guess, and is that the way the department works? It does not consider housing at all.
Honourable Minister.
By that line of questioning, I'll assume you haven't read the strategic review that I issued in the fall.
Do you know what Canada's vacancy rate was for 2023?
Pardon me? So, I didn't hear the question.
Do you know what Canada's vacancy rate was for 2023?
In which cities?
In Canada.
I don't know the general one. I know what the ones in certain cities.
It was 1.5% according to CMHC, the lowest recorded data ever. You previously earlier said that you didn't know how many students in Canada were homeless, which is another concern that we have. Did your department provide you with any research or any information documenting or predicting the housing situation of international students?
Honourable Minister.
We knew when we took this decision that there were pressures on those, particularly that were the most vulnerable. That includes students, and we had obviously seen and witnessed the stories in and around students that were packing in $5.15 to a house. Again, we're not talking about people that come here destitute. I don't ensure that every immigrant in this country has a house and I do not furnish them a house. A lot of 60% of people that come to this country under the economic categories go and find themselves housing. I think Canadians would react if we provided them with a house. They go in, they go on the market, they use the capital to purchase one. That's the way the system works. Now, with someone that comes in with capital like a student, you would expect them to find housing. Even more so, you would expect the institutions in question to go out and make sure that they have housing because those kids are vulnerable. So there is responsibility here, Brad.
Minister,
we are monitoring that now, and that's why we took the measures that were important.
We do not expect the government to provide housing. That's clear. We agree on that. But it seems silly to me that the department and you as a minister wouldn't even consider the impacts that the numbers that you're producing for international students, for example, would have on students. Because as you said, they are not the problem.
And I will give the minister the floor.
That is a good question. I don't think it is correct to insinuate that we don't. We certainly looked, when we looked to stem the volume and spread out the international visas equitably by province, at the impact on the cost of shelter in certain jurisdictions, hoping that the provinces will actually take action on those institutions that have been the most egregious in leveraging the pocketbooks of international students.
Thank you very much.